AITA for cutting my brother out after he assaulted my girlfriend at my wedding. I'd been looking forward to my wedding for over a year, dreaming of the moment I'd see Claire walk down the aisle, picturing my family cheering us on. My brother, Jake, was supposed to be my best man. We'd grown up close, sharing a room, joking around. Sure, he was protective, but I never imagined how far that could go. The week before the wedding, he seemed distant. He wasn't calling me like he usually did, and when I asked if everything was okay, he brushed it off, just nervous, man. Big day. I chalked it up to jitters and focused on finalizing the playlist and seating chart. Claire was glowing, her dress fit perfectly, our friends were buzzing with excitement, and I felt like the luckiest guy alive. On the day itself, the morning was chaos in the best way. Bridesmaids fussing over Claire's veil, me adjusting my tie with my dad's help, the smell of fresh flowers everywhere. Jake arrived late to the groom's prep room, looking sharp in his tux but with dark circles under his eyes. He gave me a quick hug and mumbled, "Let's go crush this." I laughed it off, he'd always had my back. The ceremony went off without a hitch. Claire walked down the aisle in that soft, ivory lace gown, and I swear time slowed for those few steps she took toward me. Our vows were personal, raw, sometimes funny, and the congregation wiped tears. Right after we were pronounced husband and wife, the relief and joy hit me like a wave. I kissed her, we hugged our parents, and then it was off to the reception. That's when things got ugly. We just sat at the head table, raising our glasses for toasts, when Jake appeared beside Claire's chair. At first, I thought he was joking, he was too close, leaning in like he wanted to whisper congratulations. But then he grabbed her arm. She yelped and tried to pull away, her eyes went wide. I stood up, heart in my throat, as guests turned. Jake's face was a mix of rage and panic, he didn't say a word, just shook her like she was bothering him. In that instant, all the happiness drained out of me. I leapt across the table, ripping Jake's hand off her. Glasses shattered, laughter turned to gasps, and seconds felt like minutes. Jake stumbled back, eyes wild, and the room froze. Claire was trembling, tears streaking her makeup, and I realized my own brother had just assaulted my new wife at our wedding. I froze for a heartbeat, heart pounding so loud I thought everyone must hear it. Then instinct kicked in, I reached for Claire, gently guiding her away as she sobbed, her hand pressed against her arm where Jake had grabbed her. The crunch of broken glass under my shoes felt like a grenade going off in slow motion. Guests were staring, some rushing forward, others pulling out phones. My dad barreled toward Jake, disbelief etched on his face. Jake, pale and shaking, didn't even try to explain, he just slumped against the wall. I helped Claire to a nearby chair. She was trembling so badly I thought she'd fall. I insisted someone bring her water, my childhood friend Mark knelt beside her and held her hand. I turned to Dad, voice tight, "Get him out of here." Dad and two groomsmen guided Jake, still dazed, out of the ballroom. No one said a word, the only sound was Claire's quiet sobs and the distant echo of the DJ's abandoned microphone. I looked around the tables, plates half empty, champagne glasses forgotten. My mom was face buried in her hands, tears slipping through her fingers. Bridesmaids hovered behind Claire, offering tissues. I realized I was shaking too. I slumped into the chair next to her, wrapped an arm around her shoulders, and muttered, "I'm so sorry, baby." She leaned into me, voice barely a whisper, "I don't understand what happened." Security sealed off the exit, and the wedding essentially paused in that moment. My officiant friend approached me gently, "Do you want to continue?" "Continue? How could I pretend this hadn't happened? How could I celebrate when someone I loved had been hurt by my own brother?" I flagged down our coordinator and said, "Tell everyone the reception is over." She nodded, crestfallen. Guests began filtering out, murmuring condolences. Some hugged Claire and me, others shot me looks of pity. I stood, held Claire close, and walked toward the back exit. My tux jacket felt suffocating, like armor I'd never wanted. Outside, Jake was sitting on the curb, head in his hands, as Dad stood over him, arms crossed. I walked straight to him, anger and sorrow warring inside me. "Why?" I demanded. He looked up, tears in his eyes. He stammered something about protectiveness gone wrong, about seeing someone else flirting with Claire. I told him to stay there until he cooled off, then got into the car with Claire. We didn't drive home, Instead, we went to a 24-hour diner, the kind with neon lights and pie on display. We sat in a booth, holding hands, not speaking much. I ordered us coffee and pie. She rested her head on my shoulder, and I realized that night marked the end of more than a wedding, it was the end of the relationship I thought I had with my brother. And I needed to decide, then and there, whether I could ever let him back into my life. I spent the next morning in a daze, replaying every frantic moment, Claire's cry, Jake's wild eyes, the clatter of broken glass. I barely slept, but when I woke, my phone was flooded with messages, friends offering support, our florist canceling the next day's bookings, even the caterer asking if I still wanted the food. I texted back, not sure yet. I need time. Claire and I spent that day at her sister's apartment, sitting on the floor with takeout boxes, the only reprieve from her constant trembling in bed. I held her hand while she explained how she'd frozen, how she couldn't understand why her fiancé's brother, her supposed family, would hurt her. I apologized over and over, but she shook her head, tears in her voice, this isn't your fault. Still, I felt responsible for bringing her into this. Meanwhile, my parents called separately. Dad's voice cracked as he tried to apologize, I don't know what came over him. Mom wept through her words, begging me to forgive Jake. Each call ended the same, as soon as I said, I need space, they would collapse into apologies again. Their guilt was palpable, but my grief wasn't for them, it was for the brother I thought I knew. 2 days later, I received a text from Jake. It was short and desperate, can we talk? I'm so sorry. I stared at it, thumb hovering over, reply, for far too long. Part of me ached to understand what twisted his protectiveness into violence. Another part burned with betrayal. I told him, not now, and blocked his number before I could second-guess myself. Over the next week, Claire and I met with a therapist recommended by her sister. I learned how trauma can fracture trust and that my own shock was normal. Writing it all down in a journal each night helped me untangle anger from sorrow. Claire and I also met with a lawyer friend who had handled personal injury cases. She explained our legal options if we chose to press charges, something I hadn't even contemplated amid the chaos. At work, I kept my head down. Colleagues gave me pained looks, some stopped by my desk with coffee. I appreciated their concern, but I couldn't focus on anything beyond the question, could I ever let Jake back in? I didn't have an answer. Even my favorite running trail felt hollow, each step reminded me of the adrenaline in that ballroom. By the end of the week, Claire and I sat on our apartment balcony, the city lights twinkling below. We held hands and made a pact, our marriage would come first. Whether Jake remained family or became the brother who wasn't welcome, we would protect our own. I stared at the skyline, bracing myself for the conversation I knew I'd have to have with my parents next, and the choice I'd have to make about Jake's place in our lives. The Sunday after that balcony conversation, I knew I had to face my parents. I drove out to their house, Claire beside me for support but mostly silent. When I walked in, the weight of unspoken words pressed against every wall. Mom rushed up, eyes red, saying, "We're so relieved you're here," but I cut in before she could hug me. "I need to know what you both think should happen next," I said, voice steady. Dad swallowed hard and admitted, "I've thought about pressing charges, but I don't want to ruin Jake's life." Mom added, "We love him, and we're terrified of losing him." I looked at them both, stung. "You already lost me," I said quietly. I explained that Claire and I had met with the lawyer, that pressing charges was an option, but it was ultimately my decision. I needed them to understand the gravity of what Jake did. I told them, he assaulted her, and me. There has to be accountability, or this never ends. Dad's shoulders slumped, Mom bit her lip. After a long pause, I set down my terms. I'm willing to forgive with conditions, he needs professional help, a therapist who specializes in anger and trauma, and he must apologize to Claire face to face, in the presence of a counselor. You two need family therapy, too. And if any of this doesn't happen, I can't have him in my life. They nodded, tears brimming. Dad whispered, "We'll do it." Mom reached out, and for a moment I almost took her hand, but I remembered my own boundaries. Instead, I said, "I need this in writing. No more last-minute promises." Over the next month, Jake checked himself into an intensive outpatient program for anger management. He wrote a letter to Claire expressing remorse, which she read through tears before agreeing to meet him, with me and a counselor present. Watching him apologize was surreal, the brother I grew up with, apologizing to the woman I love in a neutral office, admitting he was wrong. I didn't know if things would ever go back to normal. But I did know that Claire and I had each other, and a sense of agency I never felt during that reception. I learned that forgiveness isn't instant, it's earned. And family isn't defined by blood alone, but by respect and safety. Now, whenever I think back to that day, I no longer feel trapped by betrayal. Instead, I see the moment I chose my own values over legacy, my wife's well-being over old loyalties. And that choice, more than any wedding vow, showed me who I really am.